thanks for joining us. Duluth's skywalk system might look a lot different a year from now. Tonight, the City Council unanimously approved a resolution calling for a 6-month evaluation of the skywalk aimed at improving safety. Northern News Now's Ryan Hayes was there for the discussion of the downtown infrastructure.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Passes 9-0.
In a resolution that has been praised by groups like Downtown Duluth and Mayor Roger Reiner, City administration will now undertake a 6-month evaluation of the skywalk.
Basically says we think this is a priority and it's worth studying. It then instructs the city administration to move forward with that scope of work.
After the evaluation of the purpose the skywalk serves and its pros and cons, work will be done to make improvements and potentially close down portions of it.
It's really important. I think it's necessary, and the community feedback is ultimately going to be what informs any changes we make to our skywalk system.
Safety concerns sparked the discussion, and Councilor Mayo says it's important not to blur the lines between being uncomfortable and being in danger when talking about skywalk safety.
Being very thoughtful about how we perceive uncomfortability versus unsafety, and how that perception can kind of frame the way we think about these things.
He says an important part of this process is by helping people on an individual level with housing and other supports in addition to making changes to the skywalk itself.
I believe our focus really should be on beautification, lighting, public art restoration, things we can do to enhance the skywalk experience.
Councilor Kennedy is supportive of this resolution, but wants to be sure West Duluth gets a fair amount of investment too.
I want to make sure that we're being equitable and making sure we're re-envisioning Western Duluth as we're re-envisioning downtown.
But for now, the skywalk will be the focus of the next 6 months in an effort to make the most of an important part of downtown infrastructure. In Duluth, Ryan Hayes, Northern News Now.
Mayor Reiner pushed hard to make the timeline 6 months instead of 9 so that any projects that are suggested can be completed before the snow returns.